theme for this month is Love in Action. After last month's rather challenging theme and topics, I guess we probably could all use some real love. Hence today's topic, which is choosing real love. Some of you may have read in the last 5 or so years Greg Bear's book, Real Love. And perhaps some of you have even participated in workshops or seminars that Greg presents or those trained by him present. So in this room there conceivably could be a variety of experiences with his concepts and practices related to what he calls real love. And here's how he defines what he calls real love. He says it's unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. In The Science of Mind, Holmes describes unconditional love as an inside job. And by that, he means I love myself so much that I can love you so much. Remember the song, I love myself so much? That I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can love me so much. And there's the progression. So you probably already see that in these two references, neither one of them says anything about what you must do to earn it, to receive it, or to keep it. So what I'd like to do today is to share with you my impressions of the similarities and perhaps some of the differences in these two offerings or impressions of love at the level of human consciousness. And to suggest that there are as many ideas and schools of thought on love in today's world as there are individuals who have proclaimed themselves to be authors, artists, actors, ministers, philosophers, and so on. So it's not really about who's right or who's wrong, who's exploiting or capitalizing on an idea or a concept, as it is about how each individual processes this thing called love at the level of his or her understanding of it. It always goes back to that phrase, doesn't it? At the level of our understanding of it. So for some of us, Greg Bear or perhaps Marianne Williamson, Rinpoche or the Dalai Lama, Walt Kelly or Charles Schultz, Ralph Waldo Emerson, John Denver, may hold the key to our preference in how to define love, real love, unconditional love, or, if you choose, God love. Bear talks about the idea that for some of us, conditional love is a product of lack. His description of I love you because is really an expression of expectation. In Science of Mind speak, that would be conditional, that these are the things I expect in return for my love. Bear suggests that a lack of love consciousness comes from growing up in such an environment, which then requires an understanding or developing an understanding that this often results in our own unhappiness and that of those around us. When we're always weighing and measuring what we give with what we get. Science of Mind would describe that as being captive to the collective consciousness, which of course includes family and so on. And that such a belief in lack continues until we find our connection with our creative source, our source of being, and realize that that is our limitless pipeline. It would also suggest that this lack, which we're referring to here as conditional love, continues for as long as it takes for one to become aware of it. In Bear's chapter on being seen and getting love, he makes the statement that real love can only be felt when it's freely offered and received. I think Dr. Holmes would agree with Mother Teresa when she said, "Give it anyway." However, I think Bear's point is that being open to receive love is, for some people, a more challenging act than that of giving it. And that giving love is sometimes more of a carrot that is conditional because it has strings attached. Neither of these human behaviors, however, can diminish, compromise, or pollute the purity and the completeness of unconditional love, because it isn't given with any underlying agenda. The one other comparison that I'd like to address this morning is Greg's chapter on taking the leap of faith. He describes faith as choosing to believe that something is true and then behaving as though it were. Wow, that's pretty simple, isn't it? Choosing to believe something is true and then acting, behaving as though it were. Point on. Science of mind is right there. Holmes says faith is the substance of things hoped for or intended, the evidence of things not yet seen. So both are describing what? Thought into form. And that trusting in that process is unfailingly successful. So even when I believe it's not working, it's really working by appearing not to work. Remember that? What's the line? Where did it come from? Page 52 of the Science of Mind text. If that isn't already emblazoned in your memory, just go home today saying to yourself, page 52, page 52, page 52, until you are so incredibly curious that if you have the book, you'll go to page 52, and if you don't have the book, you'll get it so that you can go to page 52. Simple. Both of these persuasions, Bear's real love and Holmes' unconditional love, are ways that we can move from accepting love out of necessity to giving love out of the realization that that's all we really are anyway, at core. This is the development of loving awareness. Once we identify with our spiritual being, we can't help but be love. And when we can accept that kind of love for ourselves, we can give it as well. So whether we call that real love or unconditional love or God love really is not the issue. What's important, and the only thing that is important, is the realization that this is the universal energy or presence. The very act of creation is an outpouring of love toward that which it creates. That's a wonderful affirmation. The very act of my creation is the outpouring of love which Source creates. And there's no way any of us could ever pay that back. What we can do, though, is we can pay it forward, can't we? From becoming it in our own hearts in our own minds and in our own actions, to recognizing it in others, and to sharing our own with others. Whether it's returned in the same measure from those we extend it to or not is also not the issue. Our own source is unlimited, and our extending it builds the foundations for others to become it. So, as you can see, there are points of agreement, there are points of difference. It's all good in that we can select what works for us, and we can explore additional options on our own path. I've only touched a few points today, but there's 4 more Sundays in May. And that gives you an idea from what you've already heard today on how you can do the same if you so choose. So if you have some thoughts or ideas on that you'd like me to address over the next 4 Sundays, let me know. I'm happy to do that. Because if there are unanswered questions in your mind, the chances are good that similar unanswered questions may be in others' minds as well. The real bottom line, though, is that what works for you is based upon your beliefs, your experiences, your highest and best good. As I see it, the only caveat is to be clear that our own individual spiritual path, that our work and our clarity supports us in bringing forth a coherent and satisfying life for ourselves. Sometimes the habit of trying one thing after another brings frustration, doubt, even desperation or loss of a willingness to keep trying. What I'm suggesting instead is to consider, to observe, and to be open to additional tools in your own behalf, in what guides you as the knowing of truth for yourself. I do believe that being grounded on a spiritual path and supportive spiritual practices are prerequisites, though, to enhancing the tools with which I live my truth. So, as we've heard it said so often, stay open to ideas and practices that support and enhance what is already working for you. And stay open to the consideration of ideas and practices that support you in moving into some new ways of expressing love from the core of your being. And to whatever and wherever you choose to direct it. Before I close this morning, there's an added part of expressions of real love where we live. As many of you know, today is a very special holiday in the islands of Hawaii. Today is Lay Day. May Day is Lay Day in Hawaii. So I'd like to share with you in closing one of the Hawaiian customs, which is the making, the wearing, and the giving of the lei. The leis of old Hawaii were made of all kinds of what we might call semi-permanent materials. Some still are. Made out of bone or ivory, made out of seeds or feathers, sometimes shells. The traditional flower and leaf leis with twined vines, sometimes even seaweed or leaf stems, woven and twisted leaves, strung and bound flowers of every description were also included in the ancient lei making. Leis were seen as symbols of love, of a spiritual meaning or connection, of healing, of respect. So there are many references down through Hawaiian history to leis as the circle of a lei being symbolic of the circle of a family, embracing and loving itself. Many leis of old Hawaii had religious and mythological associations. Leis made of the fragrant challah fruit are connected to both love and desire, as well as marking a transition or a passing. In fact, many people will not wear challah fruit leis because they consider them too likely to bring about a change they don't want, while others will wear nothing else. So you see, isn't that all in your beliefs? We may often wonder about lei customs. The most traditional view of leis is to give and wear them for love, for honor, for respect, or for simple enjoyment. I know any lei that I put on, I know is made by the hands of someone else, lovingly and expressively, that it's an art form of expression. And that often I choose what I see is symbolic to me, and more often than not, I'm given one which is symbolic to the giver. The traditional and traditionally derived leis are out of maili, out of tea leaf, out of kukui nut, and the rare haku lei made with native flowers. You probably already know this, but this was an educational experience for me, delving deeper into these than I have in the past. My lei was associated with Laka, the patron saint of hula. How many of you knew that? The hula dancers. No. Laka, patron saint of the hula. Tea leaf was, and still is, planted around dwellings to ward off malevolent spirits. You knew that too. Anybody else heard that about the tea leaf? Good. A lei lai, L-A-I, lai, is made of 2 tea leaves tied at the base and worn open around the neck. And this was worn in the olden days, and maybe even still to some degrees, by priests and physicians. So leis have remained a very visible part of our island life, incorporating many plants, flowers, and techniques from the many cultures that make up present-day Hawaii. Modern lei makers have embraced beautiful flowers from all over the world to create leis of lasting quality and beauty. Lei-making competitions and demonstrations are common on May 1st, on Lei Day, today, as well as many various parades and other celebrations. So if you didn't know this already, mark your calendar for next May 1st for Lei Day. And be a gracious receiver from others of a lei that they have prepared for you. Or be a gracious giver of a lei that you have prepared for someone else. Or as many of the Hawaiians do, just let them stack up around your neck until you barely can see over them. Have you noticed that? I think that's so cute. At graduations and weddings and great celebration of love and joy, they just keep growing, and each one is a little different than the one before. What an expression of love that is. So, as as an expression of real love to yourself, gift yourself and someone you love with a lei. Today, on Lei Day, or any day. And so it is.
So it is.